Time, and we're coming to you live from Johannesburg in South Africa. Our severe flooding in Mozambique is escalating, I beg your pardon, into a major humanitarian and public health crisis. Now, the central and southern regions have been hardest hit. Critical health infrastructure has been damaged, especially in Gaza province. Access to safe drinking water is dire. The situation is further compounded by an ongoing cholera outbreak. And for more on this, we are joined on the line by Dr Chris van Straten, a global health advisor for clinical governance at International SOS. Dr van Straten, good afternoon, and thank you for joining us on Africa Update.
Lulu, thanks so much for having me back on the show.
Now, you are warning travelers going to Mozambique or even traveling around the country. What should people be doing to safeguard themselves?
Lulu, thanks so much. I'm Dr. Chris van Straten. I'm a global health advisor and medical director at International SOS. And we are an organization that prides itself in being able to supporting companies in Africa, but also globally, in fulfilling a duty of care towards their employees. So in this particular context, we have staff on the ground in Mozambique supporting our clients. And in fact, this morning I was on call with our medical director there to get a view on some of the challenges they're having. And yes, indeed, it is a dire situation. The flooding is extensive, many buildings, infrastructure damage, many thousands of people displaced, and the infrastructure, especially with water, damage there. So real concern that cholera, which previously has been an outbreak in parts of Mozambique, we're really concerned that contaminated water, contaminated food could certainly aggravate that. And we want to make sure that travelers are well informed, businesses are well informed, and helping them with, for example, educational material and or trying to help source supplies.
What health risks should people be aware of associated with flooding?
Excellent question. So obviously with the initial flooding and when rivers break their banks, there can obviously be physical trauma, people being swept away, and we've sadly seen that, and help with some of the responses of that. Also, Mozambique is a region, much like South Africa, with a lot of wild animals, and we've even heard reports of people encountering crocodiles and snakes, so be aware you might be in an urban area but come face to face with a wild animal. But secondary to that, and this is what I'm very concerned about because we've seen it before with major floods in Mozambique, I think a couple of years back, and even parts of South Africa, where you have freestanding water and hot, wet environment, you will see more mosquitoes, which means we will see more malaria and we will see more dengue and some of these other very infectious diseases. So people, please, you must be forewarned. If you are thinking of traveling to Mozambique and you're pregnant, you really want to take a second thought about that. And if you're going in, make sure you're preventing mosquito bites, malaria nets, mosquito nets, and taking appropriate prophylaxis.
Doc, do you think that people are generally getting, vaccinations before they go into Mozambique, just on a normal, without the floods? But now with the floods, protection should be heightened. Are people heeding that call?
No, it's a good question, Lulu, and I think it's a bit of yes and no. I know some of the very large organizations that we've been working with for many years now, we're preparing for some of these kind of events because they've happened before. So when it comes to cholera, we've already got the cholera training kits out there. We've already, some of the institutions have got bottled water on standby, and we've already got some of that equipment and boots on the ground helping to assist where there is trouble. Now, with vaccines, it's interesting. Mozambique is a country where resources have been limited, and they were struggling, but with support from other countries, South Africa, SADC, the African CDC, WHO, to get vaccines to the areas of need, and especially young children. But with these floods and the disruption to procurement chains, we're worried that some of those vaccines are not going to get to the people that need them. We're worried that some of the mosquito nets and preventative measures are not going to get there because it's just the roads have been disrupted, the infrastructure disrupted. So I'm genuinely very concerned for people in the country. I'm genuinely concerned for what's coming in the next couple of months. If you are an expat or traveler going in, please be well informed. Reach out to companies like International SOS or other providers of security and health information and make sure that you are getting the right vaccines and the right protection.
Are there any other climate-related risks on the radar that people should mitigate against throughout the year?
Absolutely. So number one, this kind of storm, this is probably one of the biggest floods ever, but we did see that massive cyclone several years back slam into Mozambique, affecting also the northern parts of South Africa and the Kruger. We predicted that this could and would happen again, and so it has. And the companies that heeded that call have been, they are forewarned, they are prepared, and we are supporting in, as we said, logistics, getting people on the ground and also getting people out if they need emergency care. But if you look at the bigger picture of Africa, Southern Africa, there are some areas where we're seeing extended drought. And in that instance, we're seeing more heat stroke. So people do need to make sure that they're keeping up to date with information and as businesses taking steps to mitigate the risk because it is preventable. Thanks, Lulu.
And in terms of what has unfolded in Mozambique, what does Mozambique need to do as a country to just get as much assistance as they can from neighboring countries as it has been happening?
Absolutely. So, Lulu, one thing that makes me very pleased and proud, to be South African, and I'm thinking now of the many South African institutions, private and government, and NGOs that are actively working on the ground right now. That's not just us. And so one that is there, and I've been keeping track of what WHO and SADC and other countries are doing. So we need to continue that. And part of this discussion, previous discussions you and I have had, is the importance of building these communities and these bridges, because what impacts Mozambique will have spillover effect on us. If there's a continued cholera outbreak, remember we had that outbreak here in South Africa, in Hammanskraal, and we know that some of those cases were imported from neighboring countries. So it is in our best interest to make sure that we support Mozambique to control this, get cholera controlled, and other infections. One of the areas where they have struggled was polio, and they were getting it under control. And I'm again concerned that with the current disruptions, that could also take a foothold. So it is in our best interest as neighbours, as fellow Africans, to support them. Thank you.
Dr. van Straten, always a pleasure chatting to you. Thank you so much for joining us on Africa Update. That was Dr. Chris van Straten, Global Health Advisor for Clinical Governance at International SOS, joining us on the line. It is 12:30 Central African Time, and our news headlines up next.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Lulu. Nigeria's President Bola Tinubu has deployed an army battalion in Kaima district in the central Kwara state after suspected jihadist fighters killed 170 people in an overnight attack. There's been an attempted hit on a person implicated at the Madlanga Commission of Inquiry in South Africa. President Cyril Ramaphosa established the commission following KwaZulu-Natal Province Police Commissioner Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi's allegations, including that of corruption amongst senior police officials. And the Chinese President Xi Jinping has spoken to Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin in calls that covered a range of subjects, including the war in Ukraine, Taiwan and Iran. Channel Africa News, I'm Onele Tsinsi.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective. Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
And it's a very good afternoon from the sports desk. I am Musibu Dimakura with the latest sports news at the Sawa. So Algerian boxer Iman Khalif said she will comply with genetic testing requirements as long as the tests are conducted by the International Council, also known as the IOC, to be able to participate in competitions. Khalif won gold in the women's welterweight division at the Paris Olympic Games back in 2024 amid a gender dispute over her eligibility after the International Boxing Association disqualified her from the 2023 World Championships based on sex chromosome testing. Now, the World Boxing Association, which will oversee boxing competitions in the 2028 Olympics in Los Angeles, said being granted provisional recognition by the IOC last May, announced mandatory sex testing for all boxers in its competitions. Khalif, who lodged an appeal to the Court of Arbitration for Sport over World Boxing's decision barring her from events unless she undergoes genetic sex testing, said she would now only undergo the testing if it is administered by the International Olympic Council. Football news now. In a major boost for Liberian Football Administration, Wind Granga, the newly appointed talent development scheme coordinator for the Liberian Football Association, has successfully completed the prestigious CAF Football Executive Management Program in Cape Town, right here in South Africa. So the CAF FEMP, a cornerstone of the Confederation of African Football's mission to elevate sports administration across the continent, equips leaders with the skills as well as the strategies necessary for sustainable growth as well as elite level management. The second edition of the intensive program, launched in September of 2025, combined virtual learning modules with rigorous in-person sessions in Cape Town. The completion of the CAF FEMP positions Wind as well as the Liberian Football Association to implement international best practices, fostering improved performance in youth development, talent identification, as well as overall football governance in the country. On to cricket news now. South Africa's specialist consultant Albi Morkel says the wickets in India will be tough for bowlers during the upcoming T20 World Cup, offering little to no bounce. So after the team's 30-run defeat to the co-host India at the D.Y. Patel Sports Academy, Morkel noted that South Africa are used to 8 bowlers, with Marco Jansen, Corbin Bosch, Andre Nokia, as well as Quinamapaka, each taking a wicket. Despite the loss, he did say the team was pleased with some of the strategies they tested on the day.
I think we saw tonight, and also the series South Africa played in India a couple of weeks ago and New Zealand now, that it's a brutal environment as a bowler to come out and do your thing. There's not a lot of bounce in the wickets. It's really true low bounce, skiddy with a lot of dew in the evening. So as a bowler, you've got your work cut out for you. We tried a few things tonight, which we were happy about. Yeah, but I think it's back to the drawing board for us.
Moko was also confident with their top order, saying they have a good balance of right-handers as well as left-handers. He believes their form in the SA20 will be carried into the World Cup.
We've got all the bases covered there, good left-right combinations, guys that can hit the ball out of the ground. So, like I said earlier, it's just keeping those guys in a good space. Most of them had good SA20s back home. Yes, different conditions, but it's actually more batting friendly. So, I'm looking forward to the tournament. It's going to be a good one.
And finally, in athletics news, the world number 1 Brenda Chepchera will headline the Absa Run Your City Gqeberha in South Africa's Eastern Cape province. It's a 10-kilometer race on the 1st of March, fresh from her record-breaking Valencia triumph late last year. The 20-year-old Kenyan star, who clocked 29 minutes and 25 seconds in Spain to top the 2026 world rankings, makes her debut in the Run Your City series. Organizers say her presence will inspire local talents, including Rose Gaba, Taylor Canava, as well as Karabo Mailula. Chepchera says the reputation of the series influenced her decision to race in South Africa, marking her first outing since her global breakthrough in January. That brings the time to 12:37 p.m. Central African Time. It concludes your sports news this hour. For any sports stories that you'd like to share with us, remember to send us an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za. Alternatively, call us. We are on call on +27 11714 4459. I'm back with more sports news on the upside in the next hour. For Channel Africa Sport, I am Mosibudi Makura.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective. Across Africa, communities rise with the promise of clean water and clean sanitation. The African Union's 2026 theme calls us to action.
It's about mobilizing real commitments, securing climate-resilient water and sanitation projects, and ensuring that water becomes a driver of sustainable development and prosperity across the continent.
A landmark moment, not only for Africa, but for the global movement for access to safe water for all.
Assuring sustainable water availability for every home, every village, every nation. This is the Africa we want.
Channel Africa, the African perspective.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Thank you and good afternoon. The Labour Department in South Africa has raised concerns over non-compliance with the national minimum wage, citing farm owners and households as the main culprits. This after Employment and Labour Minister Nomakosazana Meth announced the national minimum wage on Tuesday from $1.80 to $1.88 per hour with effect from the 1st of next month. The national minimum wage, which was adopted in 2019 at $1.24 per hour, was introduced to combat income inequality. Farm workers and domestic workers had initially less than the stipulated figure. The department's Deputy Director General Tebinkosi Mkhalipi.
Every research that we've done tell us that the compliance is at 60%, and that's why the Commission is holding a workshop this month, calling on all the parties to talk about these issues of compliance. What is it that we need to do to increase that compliance to a higher level? And as I've said, that's the biggest problem that is facing the economy, the issue of compliance. Over the last 6 years of the national minimum wage, it has been hovering around the 60% compliance rate.
The National Union of Mine Workers of South Africa has urged the Trade, Industry and Competition Department to urgently intervene in preventing job losses at Cusp Products South Africa. The NUM says in a statement that the company initiated a voluntary business rescue process in 2022 with the aim of ultimately finding a suitable equity partner. The business rescue practitioners approved a plan under which a new shareholder would have taken over the business. However, the IDC has rejected the finalized agreement and cut off funding. Union members protested outside the IDC's offices in Johannesburg yesterday to demand the halting of the liquidation process, the union's Mphohlongwane.
So we therefore agreed with the IDC yesterday that the only thing that will make us as workers to be comfortable on this particular meeting is to have a stakeholder meeting before Wednesday next week, including the business rescue practitioner to be part of the meeting, because information that has been given on the ground is too different. So we want a high-level meeting where we'll also include our national office bearers of national mine workers to come and assist us on this particular matter.
Namibia has recorded the region's most discovered and recoverable resources at 6.2 billion barrels of oil equivalent, and that's according to S&P Global Commodity Insights. That's roughly 5 times the total for second-ranked Ivory Coast and ahead of South Africa, Angola and Nigeria. In its Orange Basin, one of the world's hottest exploration zones, joint venture Azule Energy in partnership with operator Rhino Resources last year made 3 offshore hydrocarbon discoveries as they compete with Total Energies in a race to first oil. Privately held African explorer Rhino Resources plans to drill an appraisal well on a Namibian prospect this year and take a flow test on another as it looks to fast-track development. Total is moving ahead with its Venus project in Namibia and has acquired a 40% stake in the Mopani mega discovery, estimated to hold at least 10 billion barrels. In other news, Chevron and Total Energies are among the oil majors snapping up offshore blocks in West and Southern Africa as compelling geology, regulatory reforms and the need to restock spur a hunt for the next Brazil. Companies are restocking their oil and gas assets given prospects for fossil fuel demand to stay higher for longer than predicted just a few years ago. With growth in U.S. shale topping out, other regions are drawing fresh attention attention, including West and South Africa, with Shell, for example, returning to offshore Angola after 20 years of absence. The Trump administration is increasing efforts to secure U.S. supplies of critical minerals. It has called on dozens of countries to join Washington in a preferential trade zone. The EU and Japan have announced a strategic partnership with the U.S. regarding supply chains. Speaking in Washington, Japan's Foreign Affairs Minister Iwao Hori outlined the bloc's importance.
Any supply chain disruption would bring significant impact on the global economy. We should work together to address this challenge. To prevent such supply chain disruptions, the key is to diversify supply sources, including the refining and processing of geographically concentrated critical minerals.
Financial indicators: $1 in Nigeria is 1,000 naira 376, Botswana 13